464 0955.
Yeah, that's got to be something. KFUG Community Radio. We've got John Evans in the studio, and the voice you just heard on that last announcement, well, for the FRC, was his son Bryce. In full disclosure, Bryce Evans, a son of our guest, works for Redwood Voice Youth Media and Redwood Voice Community News. Although he's not in. Initially, we had an idea of like having him interview you, and then the journalist said, no, that's so not cool. You can't have the son interview the father in an official sort of capacity like this. So I don't. What's Bryce up to right now?
He's probably at home drinking coffee.
Is he drinking? John Evans, Jessica, can you hear us? Are you there on the line?
I can hear you.
Yay, that makes me happy. All right, Jessica St. R. Andrews is live on the phone. John Evans is live in the studio, and I'm not sure where I am. Paul Koritz with you. But so we're discussing John's candidacy for the Harbor Commission. We've been doing so all week. We've had Dan Schmidt, Annie Niemer, Linda Sutter, and Devin Morgante in. Thus far, we have you heard anything from Adams yet? Jessica?
I did. I think I told you he's on vacation, but he's willing to do kind of a phone-in interview.
I do remember that now. I get lots of things told to me through the course of a day, and only a few are sticking. So, John, let's dive right in, if you don't mind. What's first off, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Yeah, it's a great morning.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice
some
morning.
Sunshine. Great day.
So, why in the world? Whatever would possess you to run for office, specifically for Harbor Commission?
Well, first off, I want to thank you, Paul, for having me on. Pleasure to finally meet you. Jessica, I want to congratulate you on your transition over to Redwood Voices. Wild Rivers was a go-to daily for a lot of the community for your reporting there. So it's wonderful to have you around and keep you around. So as far as your question goes, my entire adult life, I've made it my purpose to be of service to my community. Been a peace officer for the past 18 years. I've sat on the Del Norte GOP Executive Committee for almost the past 10 years. I was a volunteer firefighter for a period. And, so I see this as an extension of my community service and my public service. The harbor is and should be and will continue to be one of the best parts of Del Norte County, and we're going to see it through.
Where are you? Are you currently a law enforcement?
Yeah, currently at law enforcement. So I'm going to finish my career there and continue to be of service to my community.
What sort of law enforcement are you?
So I've been a correctional officer at the prison for the past 18 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So, you've been there for a while.
Seen a lot of transitions.
Right. Exactly. I'm sorry, Jessica. Go right ahead. So this is going to be weird, Jessica, because you're on the phone for this one. So speak.
Right. So you don't have the facial cues.
Yeah, exactly. So speak right up and I'll shut up when I hear you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So
just a question. Is this your first time running for any kind of public office?
Yeah. So the way the Del Norte GOP committee works is you do have to submit papers through Alyssa. So I have ran for the Del Norte GOP committee previously. This last time I was appointed. But this is the first time I've really branched out into kind of other areas of our community as far as elections go.
Why specifically the Harbor District?
Yeah, that's a great question. The harbor belongs to the community, and I was approached by a good friend of mine that currently sits on the harbor, Gerhard Weber. I've known the man since he moved here. I consider him a good friend of mine, and when it became apparent that there were going to be 3 seats available, he had approached me and asked me if I would run. It's not something I had considered previously, but I respect the man greatly, and I've seen the work that he's done with the harbor thus far. So I decided that this would be a great opportunity for me to step in and to further my service to the public.
Not to put any words in Weber's mouth, why do you think he singled you out to run?
Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth either, but he was instrumental with the harbor as far as the transparency of the finances. He has a background in finance. He was a teacher in accounting, and I think he saw my demeanor and my character, and he thought it would be a valuable asset to the harbor.
Have you been attending any of the meetings, kind of keeping abreast of the goings on there lately?
Yeah, so I've attended the past several meetings. The last one was unfortunately canceled due to unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
Prior to that, my role on the executive committee with the GOP, I've been kind of, working with Gerhard. I've heard the problems. I've looked at the problems with them, the issues, and so I've been in the privy of the issues as they've kind of presented themselves for the past couple of years.
So to you, I mean, what do you see some of the issues, the challenges with the Harbor District being currently, and what do you think you can bring to maybe help alleviate those issues?
Yeah, so I think it's been stated by some of your previous guests that transparency has been not up to snuff as far as the community standards go. And I think that's something that really needs to be drilled home moving forward. And, I had a role previously where I sat on a large organization for the state of California. I represented 700 officers, and I sat on the board of directors. And they were responsible for over $50 million in assets, liquid and physical assets. So I have a history, and I look at the board of directors as it's very similar to sitting on the harbor board, where you're overseeing the entirety of the organization. There's a lot of issues, and I want to be very clear that it seems like there's been a divide on whether we're a working harbor or whether we're here solely for tourism. Tourism in Del Norte County is very cyclical, and fishing industry is also cyclical. But I think the concerns of the fishermen and the concerns of the community when it comes to tourism very much intertwine. The infrastructure of our harbor really needs to be worked on. I was lucky enough to be able to speak with Mike Rademacher, which great guy. I think he is well suited for the position that he's in now. And we kind of took a tour of the harbor, and we looked at the infrastructure and what the harbor has to offer, where it's been underutilized. So I think that's one of the big issues is underutilization of the harbor. Its infrastructure, its buildings. It can be switched up, and we need to move forward and start revamping the harbor and bring it up to a higher standard. A lot of the fishermen, the ice plant, for one, is a big problem. The fishermen rely on it. Mike Rademacher was able. He's looking into getting another ice plant. They were able to secure the ice plant's operations moving forward for a period of time. But that's but that's just a temporary measure. I mean, we need to be looking into the future and seeing how to not just put a Band-Aid on the problem, but to solve the problem. Anybody that's been down to the harbor, we have a gorgeous harbor. After the tsunami, they put in new docks. It's absolutely gorgeous, but there's areas of it that need work. And with the financial situation of the harbor, it's going to be really hard to decide where we're going to put that money. But we do need to invest in ourselves. It's no different than when you invest in yourself with a college education, knowing that in the future it's going to pay dividends. We have to be careful, though, too, because it's a very sensitive situation, the financial situation with the harbor. So we have to be very careful where we're allocating those resources. So the transparency is probably number one. The community has to trust that the harbor master and the harbor board is working to their best interest, and that comes with the transparency. I'm a firm believer that people may not agree with the decision you make, but if they understand the decision you're making, it goes over a lot better. So that's where the transparency comes in. The financial situation, and I'm in no way going to diminish previous boards and the decisions they make. They had the information they had at the time, and they made those decisions. But looking back on it now and moving forward, we might have to change some of those things, and there's going to be some hard decisions that need to be made. We are a working harbor. The fishing industry in Del Norte County is probably it is the last traditional industry that we've been able to maintain throughout all these years. Our logging industry started to kind of decline in the late 80s, 90s, through the early 2000s, and now it's almost non-existent. So the fishing industry is part and at the heart of Del Norte County, and we should be working towards preserving that. But we also need to understand that moving forward, we're going to have to change it up. We are going to have to start moving towards something that's going to benefit everybody in the long run.
What's your background in Del Norte County? Like, how long have you lived here? Did you grow up here? Like, yeah, what's your background?
Yeah, so I like to say that I was raised in Del Norte County. I came up here at the end of my 8th grade year, attended Del Norte High School, moved away, met my wife at the end of high school, moved away to Kansas to attend college. Then spent a little bit of time on the Gulf Coast. And then my wife got pregnant with our first son, Bryce, and we decided to move back home because this is home. We have a lot of family here. Mm-hmm. So I'm 40 years old, so I would say, 23, 20, almost 30 years I've been a resident of Del Norte County, outside of my time spent in Kansas for college and a short period on the Gulf Coast.
Right.
All right. So I was writing down the issues, the key issues that you were going down. So the transparency, everybody seems to agree, like transparency, and it almost seems like folks who are pining for more transparency from the Harbor Commission get lost in sort of the almost reality show kind of dysfunction of the commission sometimes in the meetings and in discourse with the interacting with the public. Can you speak to that? I mean, I imagine getting more than half of a new board seated up there will change that up. But is there any plan to sort of address this kind of? I mean, do you get that? I mean, am I misspeaking? Is that an unfair characterization of the Harbor Commission?
No,
as dysfunctional.
I don't think it's unfair at all. I think we're seeing a huge cultural change with what the community expects and for how the harbor should operate going on into the future.
Really, that's interesting. I'd like to know what sort of cultural exchange.
Well,
or change.
You look at a lot of government meetings, and when it's public comment period time, that's the time for the public to state their piece, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the board decides. And it's not really a time for exchange. And I think that lends itself into kind of a chaotic situation as far as the harbor goes. Now, we have to have that public comment period because that's how you know if you're doing what the public wants. Because at the end of the day, the harbor board is an employee of the public. So you have to hear them out. I think in the past, and it may have worked, but I think that the community is expecting overall a more professional image for the harbor. And if that's the expectation, then we need to rise to that challenge, and we need to provide that for the community.
In the past, with like harbor races that have been decided by cutting a deck of cards, things like that. I mean, it's got a very sort of Del Norte background and feel to it. It's time for those things to change, you think, as the stakes get higher? Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said, it seems like there's kind of a shift on what the public expects, and we need to rise to that. Cutting a deck of cards to decide who's going to,
I think that's a charming story.
Yeah, make the decisions for the harbor. Some of the public, they like that exchange when they go to the harbor meeting. They like that interaction. There's ways to have that outside of the harbor meeting. The harbor meeting should be sticking to the agenda. They should be hearing the public. And then if it's something that the president of the board decides needs to be put on the agenda, then you should actually put it on the agenda for further discussion. But this kind of back and forth, drag out communication that's gone on in the past, my personal feeling is the Harbor Commission, the Harbor Board, that's a big job. I mean, the harbor's a special district. It represents the entire community. In special districts, I mean, they're essentially a function of the county board and the city board. There's over 3,000 special districts in California alone, and they need to conduct business in a professional way so that we can move forward. We can't get lost in that chaos.
Another, you spoke about the kind of, and I don't know if it's a false dichotomy or not, but the sort of the division that we have here, thinking about the harbor as being either a working harbor or in the future a tourist And some people think we're sort of still waking up from that resource industry-based economy dream that was Del Norte for the first 150 years of its existence, and that has changed. But we've had guests on talking about just how much the harbor is very much a working harbor, and you talked about how the working harbor aspect, the needs of the fishermen, needs of tourists, and the larger economy in Del Norte and the changing economy in Del Norte are intertwined. So in developing the harbor, how do you see that relationship playing out?
Well, I think everybody can agree that the infrastructure is lacking currently in the harbor. I mean, we've got walkways that are being eroded away. We've got potholes in roads. So once you develop that infrastructure, it also benefits the fishing industry, right? And it also benefits the community at large and makes it a more welcoming harbor for our tourists to come to, and they want to spend time there because that's the end goal. The harbor can be a huge tax base for the county. I mean, we see the city and the county putting a lot of money into beachfront. We see the rancheria out there on Elk Valley. They're investing a lot of money into their properties. And the harbor's right in the middle, So we have to be forward thinking on how are we going to complement both sides, like the ice plant with the fishermen. That should be one of the top goals to get that fixed or to get it replaced, because that provides the tax base, which is going to provide the money for the amenities and the infrastructure for the harbor. I've gone over the development plan for the harbor, and it looks great. It really does. There's been a lot of work put into it. The existing harbor board has put a lot of thought into it on a vision for the harbor, and we should have that vision. Otherwise, we're just fumbling around in the dark. We have to have a goal. We have to have a vision. One of my concerns is that if we don't have our foundation and the infrastructure there to support it, it's all for nothing.
Right.
So we really need to concentrate on building that base. And making sure that as we bring in these investors and as we bring in these, as we start to develop and move forward with this plan, that it doesn't crumble out from beneath us. So, and we also, when we bring an investor into the harbor, if everything's in disarray, what are the odds are that they're going to want to invest in our harbor?
Right. That's going to be off-putting, and that's already sort of happened with. I mean, I don't know specifically but like Lemus and the kind of changing sort of environment, people coming in and then being, that's you, Jessica, not us.
What?
People, come in, everything being. That takes me to my next question, and then I'll shut up for a bit here, Jessica. Okay. The financial situation. I've never been able to get my head around just what's going on with the harbor and the finances. Have you?
Yeah, so I've gone over the finances in depth. I think a big problem in the past was transparency. It wasn't really being looked at with a fine-tooth comb, which is very problematic, because how do you make a plan for the future if you don't know what's coming in and what's going out?
Yeah.
Right. So I think David Negus, he's the CFO right now for the harbor, and I especially think Mike Rademacher are doing a great job in opening up those books and seeing where we're lacking and listening to the public on what they want to see, and they're really moving towards that. A lot of people say the financial situation is dire, but it isn't. I mean, with the right steps, we can really turn it around, and we need to. We need the harbor for the community. I mean, that's kind of what makes us special here in Del Norte County. We're a coastal community.
Great.
It is, just a sec, Jessica. Let me do the radio thing, and then I'm out your way. It is 22 minutes into the 10 o'clock hour. You're tuned to KFUG Community Radio. Jessica Sanar Andrews of Redwood Voice Community News on the phone. Live in the studio, we're joined by John Evans, who is running for the Harbor Commission. Oh, Jessica.
Yes.
That's the handoff to you. There you go.
Okay, cool. Nice handoff. So if you're elected harbor commissioner, you mentioned all of these issues that the district is dealing with. Infrastructure in disarray, their financial situation, the kind of coming out from underneath the, shadow, if you will, of the former harbor masters, alleged misconduct when it comes to credit card spending. What is the first thing you would do to, maybe kind of build confidence back in the community and address some of the issues that need to be fixed? I don't know if I asked that question already, but
yeah, I think I have a general concept of your question. So one of the main parts is efficiency. We need to find out where the harbor is being inefficient with the money and the resources that it currently has. I think one of those areas is the legal fees. We need to get a handle on that. Another area, the credit card spending was very much in the forefront over the past several harbor board meetings.
Right.
Now, according to the bylaws, it may not have been illegal, or it may have been illegal, the way that the credit card was utilized. But it's incumbent upon us to set up the framework and to develop the bylaws in a way that never happens again. So one of my roles as a union president out at Pelican Bay State Prison was developing policies or assisting in developing policies for the running of the prison and the way that it's implemented on the ground level. So I think I really have that to offer as far as the bylaws. So I guess circling back around is we have to figure out how we can be more efficient and where our resources are going and where they can be better utilized. So is sitting on the board, it's not a day-to-day operations role with the harbor. So we need to work closely with Mike Rademacher and give him the tools that he needs to better do his job. And we have to have oversight, and we have to identify the areas that he may be coming up short in, and then kind of guide him in the direction that the community wants, because essentially that's what the board is. The board is the conduit between the community and the harbor master, and kind of guiding the harbor in the direction that the community wants.
Great. What are some of the things that you would like to see happen at the harbor? Either in the immediate future or kind of a big picture kind of aspiration that you think the harbor can achieve.
Yeah, so I think one of the top priorities should be creating an environment where people want to invest. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Josh Mims and his Port to Table project that he's working on, and he's very passionate about that. I've spoken with him in depth about that, and we need to make it easier for individuals like that to continue with their work. So we need to create an environment that people feel comfortable that they can operate in, and the rug won't be pulled out from underneath them at the last minute, right when their project's about to take off. So we start local investors, the local community, people that want to come in and they want to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, it's not the board's harbor, it's not the harbor master's harbor, it's the community's harbor. So we have to create a welcoming environment for that.
Do you see any the problematic relationship between the harbor and the renters out there? It seems to the word that we used I think yesterday's interviews was that relationship is often fraught for some reason.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of it. I think past boards, they may have viewed having renters there, long-term renters there, as that's a very as far as the way that brings in money, it's a known equation. You know every month that this money's coming in. But as we further develop the harbor and as we kind of transition to be more tourism friendly, I think that's something that we need to look at. And I've heard the past stories on the renters out there, and I think they have valid concerns. But we also have to be concerned about how the harbor's future development also. So that's a very sensitive subject. It really is. So, and there's good points on both sides, and we need to address it with a calmness, and we need to address it logically moving forward.
And coming at least, I mean, I think it might be a difference in approach, even just to everybody coming together, just with the understanding that we're all on the same page and want the same thing eventually here. You know, we want to be successful in the harbor.
You know, I think it's interesting because this election, the Harbor Board is the only contested race in Del Norte County. The City Council went unopposed. The Board of Supervisors went unopposed. So, and you know, at the end of the day, there's no money in being a harbor commissioner. There's a small stipend, but nobody's going to get rich being a harbor commissioner. So everybody that threw their hat in the ring is because they're passionate about it and they care about it and they feel that they have something to offer the harbor. And I agree. Everybody has something to offer. And the community with their ideas have something to offer. So, you know, it kind of really, it makes me very optimistic for the future because there's so many people in the community coming together and they're seeing a problem and they want to address it. You know, and I think that's what makes Del Norte County unique.
I think you recontextualize it for me, just pointing out the fact that you've got Beachfront Park, you've got what's happening out at Elk Valley and the casino and that in between those two things is the harbor. And thinking about that, I'm like, well, yeah, it helped me really, fit the harbor into its place in our community, physically its place in our community and what that means as far as its importance.
Absolutely. And I think if you look across, I mean, you can go broad and look across the entire country, and you look at communities that are in decline and communities that are prospering. And there's one common thing about that.
What's that?
Communities that are in decline, you hear a lot of people say, somebody needs to do something about this. Right. And then you see the communities that are prospering, and you hear people say, we need to do something about this.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for somebody else to come in and save us, because nobody's going to come in outside and save our harbor. Right. And if they do, it's not going to be to our liking. It's not going to be what we want as a community. Right.
You've outlined a very key part of the whole Del Norte outlook, I think.
Yeah. So to see these candidates come out, and it's not for personal gain, it's because they care, and they've looked around their community and they said, I want to help my community.
Right.
You know, they see a problem, they say, I'm going to do something about that. And go ahead, Jessica.
No, I'm sorry. I did not mean to cut you off. Continue.
So that's an interesting sort of thing because that's Del Norte, like it often feels like there's nobody out there that's going to help us. It has to be up to us.
Yeah, you know, and we have our challenges. You know, the Coastal Commission is a huge challenge. You know, anytime we want to do any development where the ground shakes or, you know, the lights come on, we have to go to the Coastal Commission and ask for permission. So we're going to have to learn to work better with these outside agencies to get these development plans implemented and to move forward. It's tough. It's going to be real tough. It's going to be a challenge.
Right.
But I think we're up to the challenge as a community. I really do.
I was going to actually ask you about those development plans. You mentioned, you know, people aren't, Del Norters in particular, aren't necessarily, I guess, welcoming to outsiders coming in and telling us, you know, this is what you should do. A lot of what's outlined in that strategic development plan that Mike Barr had been working on for the past few weeks relies on kind of outside investors coming in and doing development, like, for example, a hotel or a boardwalk or, you know, I think a boutique hotel was kind of thrown around a little bit. And then now the Harbor District is also working with Steve Opp of a firm called Creed, who's also bringing in, you know, outside developers, and his role, I guess, is to develop a master plan to encourage investors. What is your take on that? What are your thoughts on some of the bigger ideas that have been floated in the strategic development plan in particular?
Well, you know, I think it's good that we have other eyes on our harbor that kind of give us a different perspective. It's kind of like watching your kid grow up. You see them every day, and then one day you wake up and they're adults, and you go, "How did we get here?" Sometimes it's very easy to overlook something that you see every day. So a lot of different perspectives are great. They're great for our community. They're great for the harbor. These plans aren't set in stone. They still have to be approved. The community still has their input. If there's changes that need to be made, we're going to change them. Because at the end of the day, this is somebody's vision. This is an organization, or this is a company's vision for what we can become, but it's not set in stone. And it's something that, it's a goal, or, it's an idea, but we need to foster that idea. We need to have our input. We need to make sure that it's truly uniquely Del Norte at the end of the day.
In that regard, what are your thoughts on wind energy?
Yeah, wind energy. It's interesting. I think sustainable energy is a good thing. I think it's something that we should work towards, but I don't want to be the testing bed for it. There's been a lot of reports off of the East Coast with some of the wind energy they've done and the effect on the wildlife. And I think we really need to look at that. Southern Oregon, just recently, I think they pulled out of their wind energy projects. Do we want to be the testing bed for that? Do we want to potentially sacrifice our wildlife and, our coast as the testing bed for it? I'm not there. I don't think that's a good idea. Let's see it work somewhere else, and then let's get on board. But I don't want to implement wind energy here and it have catastrophic effects on our wildlife, and then now we're chasing a whole new problem. So let's see how it works somewhere else first before we implement it.
So you would not be for implementing it here, of course, is what you're saying, or Crescent City Harbor becoming the maintenance, or one of the maintenance and operations ports for the wind development, all of that.
Well, when you say it's a maintenance and operations port,
I don't know what I mean.
Yeah, well, no, but I get what you're saying. I wouldn't. Great. Let's have the maintenance and operations port here, but let's not have it right off our coast.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole maintenance and operations port, I guess that the idea is that that the folks that would service those platforms would be based out of Crescent City and would be, I guess, ferried via boat or helicopter, or probably boat out there. But you're basically saying you don't really want the area to be kind of the guinea pig for this industry on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because we don't know the ramifications of it. It's really new. And I don't think that's a risk that we should take. We have a pristine coastline.
And a pristine fishery, too, from what I understand. At least head and shoulders above other places.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Touching back on the idea of us being a working harbor, I think that's at everybody's heart in Del Norte County. I don't think there's anybody that says that we should just put the fishing industry on the wayside. And sitting on the commission when I'm elected, we do need to make an environment for our fishermen where they want to stay here. Because if you think about it, once they take their operation away, it's going to be a lot harder to get them back. They're going to move their operation, they're going to move their family, they're going to move their employees. And I don't know if we're going to be able to incentivize them returning to our harbor. Once they're gone, they've uprooted their lives and they've moved away. So we need to make an environment that is way more accommodating. Or let me correct, not way more accommodating, but let's not incentivize them to leave. Let's incentivize them to stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that totally does.
So.
And I can see how even, with the seasons that we have now and the fleet, which is and the size of the fleet now and everything, it still kind of represents, I think, to the community, as you say, like sort of the soul of a part of the heart and soul of Del Norte, but certainly the soul of the harbor as well.
Yeah.
And one of the other candidates who was in said he didn't want to see Crescent City become like the equivalent of like some sort of salvage yard, just because we were servicing the wind turbines out there all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jessica?
Yes.
What you thinking? How much more time would you like? We're just about to the place to wrap up.
I think I'm good. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you feel voters should know, that before they cast their ballot?
Yeah, early voting started already, and I know there's a lot of voters that have already submitted their ballot. There's undecided voters, but I want to encourage everybody to look at the candidates. The Del Norte GOP, we've endorsed Annie Niemer, Dan Schmidt, and myself. Everybody comes from a very diverse background, and I think it's great. That's what we need in the harbor right now. We need a lot of different perspectives looking at this problem moving forward. And I think I'm a candidate that has a background that could absolutely benefit the harbor. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, Jessica, are we finished?
I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
John, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your vision for the Crescent City Harbor. John Evans, candidate for Crescent City Harbor Commission, and thanks for Bryce. We love having Bryce on.
He's great. I love him. Yeah, he's my son. I guess I'm impartial, but
Yeah. What are you going to say, right?
Yeah.
You know?